today's world, fad diets are everywhere, including the HMR diet, the Beachbody diet, the Jenny Craig diet, the Atkins diet, the Paleo diet, the Herbalife diet. The list goes on. But what diet is the best diet? And which is the most sustainable? I asked my audience, which nutritional method is the best for overall human health? Over half replied with the omnivorous diet. But one of my audience members gave me an even better option, and she really stood out. She mentioned that research is always changing. She's exactly right. Nutrition is something that is constantly being researched and constantly changing and being updated. How much protein do we need? How much vitamins do we need? How many nutrients do we need to have to stay healthy? What about these antioxidants? What do they do? Today we're going to discuss a little bit about research as we focus in on the unsustainability and unhealthiness of the popular omnivorous diet. I personally am a huge nutrition buff. I love researching nutrition. I love trying new diets. And in the last 3 to 4 years, I've watched a obscene number of nutrition documentaries that discuss a list of topics, including sugar, GMOs, plant-based diets, and so on. But let's get back to the main subject here. Today I will discuss the omnivorous diet, and we'll break it down into the health, how the omnivorous diet affects your health, how it affects the earth, and its sustainability. Before we go on, let's review what the omnivorous diet actually is. The omnivorous diet includes both plants and animals. That means meat, eggs, cheese, all the byproducts, as well as plants. Beginning with our health, the omnivorous diet is known to be the balanced diet. It is associated with the food pyramid, but it is also very high in fat and very high in protein. The obesity scare that we've seen over the past few years develop from adult obesity to child obesity is somewhat attributed to this diet. The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health did a review that showed that high fat and high protein diet contributes to coronary disease, diabetes, and cancer. And a lot of these diseases begin after becoming obese. So it's a chain reaction of eating, obesity, and disease. And on top of that, pharmaceuticals, which affect your body quite terribly. Once you have an issue and you take a drug, you also are going to get those side effects of those drugs. So you're going to be fat, sick, and nearly dead, which is also a documentary and very good, by the way. Let's move on, however. Let's see how it affects the earth. The earth is going to be affected in terms of land usage, water usage, and CO2 emissions. With the growing population of our human population, the demand for animals is going through the roof, and the demand for clearing land and creating more land for cattle is obscene. Our land is almost completely used. The forests are decreasing, including the rainforests. Water usage is through the roof. And once we get to the video clip that I prepared for you today, you will understand how much water it really takes to create the meat that is on your plate in front of you. CO2 emissions. Cows produce methane. Not only is it going to the ozone, but it's also going into the land. It's going into the water. It makes its way to the ocean and pollutes the ocean. Lastly, let's talk about the sustainability of this diet, including the land usage. Let's go back to land usage here. When we are making more land for cattle, we also have to make more land for the cattle's food. And given that we are using twice the amount of land for cattle food than our own food, there's an energy loss from producing food for them rather than just producing food for ourselves. And in order to keep up with the demand, factory farming is taking place where animals are crowded together and antibiotics are being just shoved into these animals because we got to keep them healthy because we're not keeping them how they naturally would be. Overfishing and extinct species is on the rise as our population is increasing, and the demand and the demand is higher than the ability of our world, our animals, to reproduce. So let's think about some alternatives here. But before we do, let's take a look at this video. I have a short video for you talking about the sustainability.
A lot of that is our food choice. It's expected to have a 40% shortage in freshwater supplies by the year 2030. We have, again, irreversible loss of biodiversity, ecosystems, and extinction of species faster than we've ever seen before for the past 65 million years. We have a world hunger issue with a little less than 1 billion people on Earth suffering from hunger, with about 350 children dying from hunger each hour.
You might be asking yourself, how is all that possible? And I had the same questions, because in fact, many of these issues are not only related to our food choices. Many are very complex problems with several social, political, economic, and cultural variables. But here are some intriguing facts. 70% of our arable land is used to grow crops for animals and not humans. It takes on average 2,400 gallons of water and 12 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of beef. 5 million acres of rainforest are destroyed every year so companies can graze animals and grow food for these animals. The excrements of 80 billion land animals killed every year for food are not treated and go back into our water basins and our oceans, creating a lot of pollution. And these are just a few examples. So when you consider these facts, it all begins to fall into place.
This is an excerpt from one of a newer documentary that I've seen. It's called Food Choices. And it makes a lot of really good points about the sustainability of an omnivorous diet. Like I mentioned before, land usage, water usage, and carbon emissions are really taking a toll on our planet. So, what are some alternatives? There is the vegetarian diet, which still has a carbon footprint as they still have dairy, but it's less because they're not eating meat. And there's also the vegan diet, which uses no animal products whatsoever. In fact, the 2015 Frontier in Nutrition study estimated that a vegan diet or a vegan menu has a climate footprint 31% smaller than the vegetarian menu, which, remember, has dairy but is mostly plant-based, and a 74% smaller than the omnivore menu. 74%. That means if everybody switched to being vegan, or if even half of us switched to being vegan, our footprint would be greatly reduced. So in conclusion here today, in closing, let us review what we discussed today. The omnivorous diet is poor for our health in terms of obesity and diseases such as coronary disease, diabetes, and cancer. It affects our planet, our water usage, our CO2 emissions, our land usage is being completely depleted. And our overall sustainability is greatly reduced. So overall, the most popular omnivorous diet is not as healthy or sustainable as a plant-based diet, just as a vegetarian or a vegan diet. Lastly, I'd just like to leave you with this question. I asked my audience this: if you knew that your diet was unsustainable and unhealthy, would you make a change? Now, my responses that I got were about half of the audience said they would make a change, and about a quarter said they wouldn't. Where do you stand?